Olá pessoal, hoje nós vamos iniciar uma nova série que na verdade é uma homenagem aos grandes pesquisadores, né? Pesquisadores sensacionais que com seu trabalho árduo trazem muitas informações para todos nós. Infelizmente no Brasil essas pessoas não são tão conhecidas e ficaram muito conhecidas por causa da internet. E eu estou fazendo aqui a minha parte em divulgar esse cara que eu acho sensacional, realmente. Estamos falando do Jordan Maxwell. Eu vou ler aqui um breve relato. O Jordan Maxwell continua como um pesquisador e erudito independente. Isso é muito importante. Seja um pesquisador independente no campo da filosofia ocultista e religiosa. O seu interesse por esses assuntos começou em 1959. Ele serviu durante 3 anos e meio como editor de religião da revista Traz, o mais antigo jornal da América, desde 1873. Seu trabalho explorando os fundamentos ocultos das religiões ocidentais e das sociedades secretas cria respostas entusiasmadas dos públicos em todo o mundo. Ele realizou dezenas de seminários intensivos, hospedou seus próprios programas de rádio, exibiu mais de 600 programas de rádio e escreveu, produziu e apareceu em inúmeros programas de televisão e documentários, incluindo 3 especiais de 2 horas para a rede de TV da CBS. Com uma série do Mistério Antigo de 5 partes internacionalmente aclamada, todas dedicadas a entender as antigas religiões e sua influência generalizada nos assuntos mundiais de hoje. Seu trabalho sobre o tema das sociedades secretas, antigas e modernas e seus símbolos fascinou o público em todo o mundo há décadas. Na verdade, eu acredito que ele seja uma pessoa tão importante ou mais importante do que essas pessoas que a gente ouve sempre, esses outros pesquisadores, Zecharia Sitchin, David Icke, enfim. Nos Estados Unidos essas coisas são levadas a sério, não é essa palhaçadinha que tem aqui no Brasil, que todo mundo não dá a mínima bola para isso. Mas ele é o nome, na minha opinião, ele é um pesquisador sensacional. Eu vou tentar sempre trazer vídeos dele para cá e de outros também. E eu espero que você goste. É um trabalho, uma entrevista aí longa, uma palestra, na verdade, um pouquinho longa dele, e está legendada, tudo. Espero que vocês gostem. Se vocês já viram em outros canais, revejam. Jordan Maxwell é o cara, tá bom? Vamos em frente.
Trail of the truth for over 40 years. If anything, he's probably the expert. He has spawned most of the researchers you know, such as Zecharia Sitchin and David Icke and so on. He brought them to the public. Jordan has not been credited in half the way that he should be. And I want to do that right here. And he's given some of our lead researchers some information, and they've never credited him. Okay, so you may think it comes from them and that they're so smart and brilliant. Believe me, they wouldn't be half the place they are today if it wasn't for Jordan Maxwell. And so we really want to honor him here today. And we're very proud to have him speak at a Project Camelot conference.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the one thing I'd like for you to take away from anything that I say today is this one point, that nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. The police aren't who you think they are. The sheriff is not who you think he is. Banks do not do what you think they do. Governments don't operate anywhere near the way you think they do. And that's why today, when you look at what's going on in the world today, none of it makes any sense. It's all crazy. It makes no sense at all. Seems very destructive. But actually, in point of fact, you don't know how the system works. It's working perfectly fine. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And the people, the masses, are entertained with television and alcohol and drugs, and the wealthy continue to get wealthy. And so it's working perfectly fine once you understand how the world really works. And nothing works the way you think it does. My whole life I have been interested in theology and religion. And that's my real love. And I've spent all my awakened hours of research throughout the country and throughout the world studying theology and religion. But not to learn from it, but to learn about it. And it's a fascinating story once you see how our religions came into being. And you begin to see things that you've never seen before, and begin to have questions that never occurred to you before. And so that's been my major love. But I also, in the early 80s, very early 80s, came into contact with some people who were experts on government banking. And I was in their company for many years. And I learned how governments work, and it was absolutely astounding to me to see the real truth. It's taken me 48 years to get here tonight, but I'm going to give you a secret that I've learned. I'm going to give this to you for free. This is a secret, and it's a very powerful secret. People will always, financially and in every other way, people will always support what they want to hear. They will not support what they don't want to hear. If you like country music, you're not going to pay $30 for a rap concert. If you like a particular movie star, you're not going to go see somebody else. People will always, if you like a particular kind of food, you're not going to the opposite restaurant. So people will always support what they want to hear. And the one thing around the world that the ancient peoples and anyone who has traveled and dealt with the public, you will find the one thing that people, generally speaking, do not want to hear is the truth. Nobody is happy when they have to be faced with the truth. And so there are some brave people, like maybe you here today, who are at least open to hear something that may conflict with what you believe or what you know, but at least you're truth seekers. That's what I have always been, as a truth seeker. I always say I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything, because I'm at least smart enough to know how much I don't know. But when you begin to break down how government works, banks work, you begin to see a whole world that you've never known. The word I use is occult. Occult simply means hidden. And this is exactly what is going on in the world today. Our governments, banks, institutions of education, etc., are operating on a totally occult or hidden basis. And so what we are told and given to understand is not the truth. Let me give you an example. How many people have heard me lecture or talk about the maritime system of commerce? Okay, so most people at least have heard about the subject. For those of you who haven't, I'll just give you some examples. when you go into court, why do you have to go to court? You play tennis on a court. You play basketball on a court. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. So you have a team of lawyers, and they throw the ball back in the other guy's court, and that team throws the ball back in the other guy's court, and the judge is a referee. And he doesn't care who wins or loses. He's going to get paid anyway. So he wears a black robe. Black robes, most people never question, why do Catholic priests wear black robes? Kids that graduate from high school wear black robes. Judges wear black robes. Rabbis wear black robes because black robes represent the planet Saturn. They are a symbol for the planet Saturn. Saturn was called by the ancient people Lord of the Rings. And Saturn is Lord of the Rings. This is why women were told in the ancient world to listen to their God. And the concept was they would wear an ear ring. Men were to get married before their gods. They would wear a wedding ring. Because the old ancient god of the Middle East, one of the ancient gods of the Middle East, was the planet Saturn. Saturn was directly connected to Yahweh, the Hebrew God. And so this is why even today the Jews celebrate the worship of Saturn. Saturn in the old Phoenician language was called Shabbath. Look up in the Phoenician language. You will find that the planet Saturn was called Shabbath. And his worship to honor him once a week was called Sabbath. So when the Jews are having Sabbath, they're actually paying homage to their god Saturn, Lord of the Rings. And so when you start breaking down where religions have come from, theologies have come from, the six-pointed star, for instance, is called the Star of David. Actually, it's not the Star of David. All the encyclopedias and reference works will tell you that it's called the Star of Saturn. It is a hexagram. Hexagrams represented the planet Saturn. So, and then when you look at the Christian system of things, the church is a disgrace, in my opinion, period. The Christian church is a disgrace. Everything that comes out of the Christian church in America is a disgrace. It's filled with lies, deception, innuendos. It is a money-making corporation. It operates under maritime admiralty law. And there is a whole world of knowledge that Christians have not been given about the Scriptures, about who wrote the Bible, where it came from. I have found that even Judaism is not a BC religion. It did not exist in the BC. So when we talk about ancient Jerusalem, there was no ancient Israel. Jerusalem, yes, but no ancient Israel. So when you think about and how you have preachers and religious leaders talk about ancient Israel this and ancient Israel that, in point of fact, Israel is not a BC religion. The whole concept of the Old Testament was developed right around the 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th century A.D. So that the Old Testament is not an ancient record of an ancient people. There was no ancient Israel. Two of the greatest scholars, archaeologists in Israel, have written a book called Unearthing the Bible. And these two men, these two archaeologists, are the best and the brightest of the archaeologists in Israel. And in their book, basically, that's what they said. There was no Moses, there was no King Solomon, there was no King David. The entire thing was written probably in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century A.D. in Europe, developed and ultimately taken. All of that was taken by the Jesuits in the Catholic Church and rewoven into a story and given to us today as an ancient Israel. There was no ancient Israel. Never existed. There was no Moses. There was no King Solomon. Solomon was Sol, Om, On. Sol is Latin for the sun. Om is the Hindu word for the creative force. And On is the name of the sun in Egypt. The Greeks call it Heliopolis, but the Egyptians call the city of the sun On. Go look in a dictionary, look up the word On. It will tell you it's the city of the sun in Egypt. This is why you flip a light switch on, because it was a city of light. So you take Sol, Om, On, the three names of the sun in the ancient esoteric languages, it becomes Sol, Om, On, or Solomon. Even in the ancient Bibles, the old Bibles from the 12th, 13th, and 14th century, in the Bible, it didn't say King David. It kept talking about King Druid. And incidentally, the system of government and laws that we live under today in America and in the Western world is a Druidic system. America is a Druidic country. Canada is Druidic. Like I said, Western civilization is a Druidic establishment. The Druids were a very powerful priesthood in Europe, even before the Roman Empire existed. And they were the attorneys, the lawyers, the religious leaders, the politicians. It was called the Druidic system. And one of the most important symbols in the Druidic system was a magic wand, like Merlin the magician with his magic wand. And orchestra leaders and conductors use a magic wand. That's a Druid symbol. And the Druid symbol of the magic wand was made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. And the entire establishment in Hollywood is a Druidic system. So if you don't understand Druidic symbols, you'll never know what's going on in Hollywood and where they're being financed, who's financing them, and how this stuff really works in relation to government. There's an enormous amount of material out on the web showing pictures from motion pictures from 5, 6, 7 years before 2000, before 9/11, in which 9/11 is in motion pictures. And the original film of Matrix, in the original Matrix movie, the star is giving some kind of an affidavit to sign, which is his identification or something. And the camera zooms in on it for just a moment when he's signing it. But if you stop the film, stop it and back it up and zoom in, you will see the document is about something that is going to happen. It says September 11, 2001. And this was way before September 11, before 9/11. Chris Carter, classic example when I'm talking about Hollywood. Chris Carter, the creator of X-Files. When X-Files ended, Chris Carter, the producer, started a whole new television series called The Lone Gunman. And the very first movie was a lead-off movie for the new television series. And in that movie, that came out right around February or March of 2001. February or March of 2001, Chris Carter's new television show called Lone Gunman was started on Fox television. And in the very first episode, it's talking about how factions within the U.S. government were going to fly 757s into the World Trade Center and lock them down purposely. And in the movie, you're seeing the planes going into the World Trade Center. That was back in, 8 months before it even happened. Chris Carter is telling you something in the movie. And in the movie, they asked, well, why are these people in the government doing it? And one of the guys in government said, because we need to control the Middle East, we need to control the oil flow, we need to have a dominant place in the Middle East so that we can promote wars, which is good for business. And but that's in a movie, and it shows the planes going into the World Trade Center. General Electric, about 3 or 4 years before 9/11, General Electric came out with a refrigerator in Italy. And on the face of the refrigerator, painted, were 2 jets flying into the World Trade Center. Shows the World Trade Center and 2 big planes flying into them. And I have many, many pictures from Hollywood showing 9/11 jets flying into the World Trade Center. So all I'm saying is that Hollywood knows what's going on. And this whole thing is being orchestrated from behind the scenes to knock down the World Trade Center. I mean, and the day it happened, I became so depressed, I just dropped out of speaking. I no longer toured, I no longer did radio, I no longer talked to anyone, and I've been out of commission for many years because 9/11 just shut me down. As far as I was concerned, I was through with America. I'm through with all of it. Because in any country that can buy 3 high-rises falling down into dust and not ask any questions about that, I just gave up. I thought, you know, yeah. So, because I'm well aware of how governments work, religions work, and banks, and, well, let me give you an example. There are only 2 things on the earth, land and water. People live on land. So the law of the land is the law of people who live on land. That's why it's called the law of the land. But the law of the land is different in every country because it's the law of the people who live on the land. But you can do things in Russia you can't do in America. You can do things in South Africa, but you can't do in China. So the law of the land is different in every country. But the law of water is the law of money, the cash flow, the liquid asset. And I'll give you an example of how this works, because when a ship pulls into harbor, it's coming in on water, and it's going to bring products. And so all ships, by law, must be female. This is why you will always hear captains saying that she is a good ship. She is seaworthy, she, because all ships are female. And the reason why is because she produces the product. And when a ship pulls into harbor, it parks at the dock, and each piece coming off the ship has to have a certificate of manifest. And the ship where it sits is in its berth. So when you were born, you came out of your mother's water. So you have to have a birth certificate, and it's signed by the dock. And if you drop the car or the television, it's a stillborn, so you have to have a death certificate. So your body, as a matter of fact, your body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange. If you take your Social Security card, and I'm not going to talk much more about this because there are other things I want to talk about, but this I think is interesting. If you take your Social Security card, and on the back of a Social Security card, you will see a series of numbers. And those numbers on mine are in red. And those numbers on the back of the Social Security card represent your physical body on the stock exchange in New York. And if you take a bill, any kind of an American bill, whatever it is, 10, 20, 100, 1, whatever it is, you will see a series of numbers here, code numbers on the bill. You match the numbers on the bill with the back of the Social Security card. It's because there's about $6.5 million or more circulating around the world with your Social Security number on the bill, because your body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange. They are buying and selling your personal body on the stock exchange in New York. And most people don't understand any of this and have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's the way banks work. And so I have discovered also that banks and government are basically based on religion. Religion is at the bottom of all of this. This is why I have no respect. I have a respect, a reasonable respect for law and order. I'm not so stupid as not to understand the need for red lights and the things which are required in law for people to live together. But I have no respect for religion, government, banking, and especially educational institutions, because I know who finances these organizations. I know where the money comes from. Our banks were given to us by the Knights Templars, the Masonic Lodge of Knights Templars in Europe. Our educational institutions, universities and colleges, were given to us by the Masonic Order coming out of Rome. This is why the square martyr board is a Catholic symbol. And Jews, how many Jews know that when you wear a yarmulke, that's not Jewish, it's Roman? That's why the Pope wears a yarmulke. That's why the cardinals wear the yarmulke. It's a Roman symbol, it's not Jewish. The Jews were told to wear the yarmulke to show subjection to Rome. And they got so used to using it, they think it's a Jewish symbol. It's not Jewish, it's Roman. And of course, there's another thing that bothers me too when it comes to religion. There is a world of difference between Jewish and being anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. It doesn't mean the same thing at all. So when you hear someone use the term anti-Semitic, just remember that there's 4 kinds of Semitic: North, East, South, and West Semitic. And there are 13 different races of people in the world that are Semitic. The Arabs are Semitic. So when you say someone's anti-Semitic, it means that they are against 13 races of people in the world, 13 nations. So when somebody says something about Jewish, it's anti-Jewish, not anti-Semitic. So it's just a small point, but it's big with me because people use terms and they use the wrong terms and don't understand what they're saying. Religion, government, educational institutions. I have found that so many people willingly, and as I said last night on this forum, so many people willingly bend themselves to what their masters want from them. What your masters want is for you to be in compliance, for you to think what they have told you to think. I've been behind the cameras in national television studios and watched network news people doing their job. And what most people do not realize is on the nightly news from the networks, when you see the newsman talking directly to you, he's talking right into the camera, giving you the news. In point of fact, that's not what's happening. There is a big box, a large box, with a television screen on the bottom. And there's a glass, a clear glass on an angle. And the television, and there's a guy sitting off the side typing, or it's already typed, to telling the newsman what to say, word for word. And so the television screen is hitting this glass and is reflecting straight out so that the newsman can sit right there and look directly into the camera and read the news. And so he's just reading what somebody else wrote. And that guy wrote it because the boss told him what to write. And so the news is nothing more than what somebody on higher up wants you to believe. So that's why I have no respect for the news. I don't watch television. I'm not interested in Hollywood or movies as such. But there is a lot of interesting stuff in movies. Government, again, I say, it's just my belief. I believe government boils down to the war between the Crips and the Bloods. But that's all it is. It's just one gang is superior to another gang. Unless, of course, that other gang gets a little more money and gets a little bit more vicious. Now they take over town. And so it's a war between gangs. Because after all, when it's all boiled down, it boils down to one thing. We're all human. And humans, like Martin Luther King said, people are organizations. Martin Luther King said, organizations are a lot more naughtier than individuals. Individuals can be bad and corrupt. But when you get a whole bunch of individuals bad and corrupt, and they're wearing uniforms and wearing badges, now you've got a gang. And the police department even have said that. You know, they tell me things like that. Yeah, we're the biggest gang in town. We're legal. We can do whatever we want. So I understood a long time ago that government is simply gang warfare. Who's going to run this town? Well, what family in the mob is going to run this area of the town? So that's why I have no respect for government, banking, or any of the rest of it. I could go on about so many different things that I'm interested in. Again, like I said, religion is a big thing with me. I believe that in the New Testament, the story about Jesus in the New Testament, it's just my opinion, but I believe that that story is an encoded message. It's a metaphor. It does not represent history as such, but it is a very powerful encoded story. And if you understand the symbols and the words that are used in the New Testament in the story of Jesus, and understand that the entire story is a metaphor, you read between the lines and begin to see that there's symbols and ideas are being expressed, and you didn't even see it. A classic example is, why did Judas go out and kiss Jesus? Just an example. In the Bible, we're told that Judas went out and kissed Jesus. And Christians will tell you, well, the reason why he did that was to identify him so that he could be arrested. No. Logic alone would tell you that's incorrect, because Jesus would not have been living in the south side of Chicago or in the north end of New York. You know, he would have been living in a little Mickey Mouse little village, and probably 300 people there at most, 15 minutes to 20 minutes to walk across the whole town. And, you know, so how could he be hiding? Who would be so stupid as not to know who he is? He's sitting out there in the garden with his followers. So what do you need to go out and kiss him for, to identify? Well, that's not what the Bible says. It doesn't say he went out to identify. It says Judas went out and kissed Jesus to betray him, not identify. This is why the mafia, when you're going to be killed, they give you the kiss of death. Because in the ancient world, in the Middle East, when a scorpion bites you, it leaves 2 cuts on your skin, and those 2 cuts look just like human lips. So the ancient people said you've been given the kiss of death. And this is why when the mob's going to whack you, they give you the kiss of death, right? It's because of the scorpion is the backbiter. Jesus represents in the story a symbol. It's a metaphor. And Jesus is a metaphor for the sun. And so boiling it down, Christianity is sun worship based on astrology. Because nobody owns the sun. Africans don't own it. And we don't own the sun. So obviously the sun belongs to God. So it's God's sun. And he's the light of the world. Of course the sun's the light of the world. What else lights the world if it's not the sun? And he has 12 helpers. Of course, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. He is our risen Savior. Of course, it rises every morning about 5:30. And the sun is your Savior. If it don't come up, we're dead. So once you start breaking down the symbols in the Old and the New Testament, you begin to see that Christianity is basically astrology and sun worship. But it has been so well hidden and so cleverly disguised. And once you start breaking it down and reading the whole story, it becomes overwhelmingly obvious this is what we're talking about. He has a virgin birth. He's born of a virgin, of course. Virgin birth because one of the constellations of the zodiac is Virgo, Virgo the Virgin. Let me give you an example of how this works. On the first day of summer, the very first day of summer, the sun is as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to go. It doesn't go any further north. The first day of summer, the sun is as high in the northern hemisphere, and it begins to work its way south. And each day it moves 1 degree. And as it moves 1 degree each day, 90 days later, or 90 degrees later, it's halfway down. So now we say that the sun was the Lion King in summer. The Lion King because the sun was in the constellation of Leo, the Lion King from Disney. But then as the sun moves southward, it finally hits Scorpio. So God's sun was really hot. He was the Lion King, but now he's falling. So now we call it fall because he's falling, and he's falling south. So it moves into fall in Scorpio. This is why Judas gives Jesus the kiss of death, because Judas represents Scorpio. And Scorpio gives the God's Son, the light of the world, the kiss of death. And now he's going to die in Capricorn. He's going to die and go all the way down. But what's interesting about this is that the sun goes all the way down south until it hits what is called the winter solstice. And that's on December 22nd, the sun hits the lowest point on the sky in the south on December 22nd. It's called the winter solstice, the beginning of winter. And for 3 days, the United States Navy will show and explain it to you that the sun comes up for 3 days, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, on the same degree. It doesn't go any further south, and it doesn't come back north. But on the same degree that it was on December 22nd, the sun rises the next 2 days, 23rd and 24th, on the same degree. So the ancient people said that the sun was alive. He was the lion of the tribe of Judah, Leo. He got the kiss of death from Scorpio, and now he is 3 days, he's not moving at all. So therefore he's in his tomb for 3 days. Then on the 25th of December, the sun moves 1 degree northward. And you can calculate that, as the Navy does. You can calculate. It's very slight, but if you got the right instruments, you can see the sun move 1 degree northward. Therefore, it came back to life. So now we celebrate God's Son being born again. He's born again. When? On December 25th. So we celebrate Christmas, or Christ's Mass. But as the sun moves back toward the northern hemisphere, it crosses over the equator at spring. Because he was dead in winter, now he's springing back to life. So as he comes back to life and crosses over the equator, there was a celebration called the Passover, because the sun has passed over the equator, coming back to the northern hemisphere. And so today we even say when someone dies, we say grandmother passed last night, grandfather passed away, or they passed on. But always past was associated with death. So God's Son has passed over the equator. So once a year, around the world, the Jews celebrate the Passover, which is nothing more than the sun passing over the equator. And Christians, of course, cannot do that because that's Jewish, and they wouldn't want to have anything to do with the Jewish celebration. So Christians have a totally different celebration. They call it the resurrection of God's Son. And so they go out on the Passover and go out and have something called the Easter sunrise service. So you actually have Christians going out and waiting for the sun to come up for something called a sunrise service. I mean, what is that all about? Christians are worshiping the sun. And then when you start looking at how the word S-O-N and S-U-N are interchangeable in Christianity, and God knows there's a lot of information on that. So that basically you boil down Christianity as sun worship, as astrology. Old Testament is astrology. Sun worship. Yahweh, as I said, was associated with the sun and the planet Saturn. Let me give you another example about the ancient religions of the world. Moses was a lunar deity. Moses was a leader of the moon cult. This is why in all the paintings and sculpturings in Europe, you will always see Moses wearing horns. You ever seen that? Moses wearing horns. It's in the Vatican. It's in all the museums of the world. Why is Moses always pictured with horns? Because Moses was a leader of a lunar cult, the moon worshippers. So at one time, the Jews were worshippers of the moon. And that time, a period of time, we call the period of Moses. This is why, and why? It's because the Native Americans, their chiefs wear horns. The Vikings wore horns. Because all of these cultures, Native Americans, Vikings, and the ancient people of the Middle East, worshiped the moon. The moon, of course, in the lower quarter was the horns. And this is why they wore horns. In Arabia, there's a high mountain range in Arabia. And at night, from the Egyptian side, the moon comes up in the east, and it comes up from a mountain range. And so the ancient peoples believed that the moon was a god, and it lived in the mountain. And there are religious celebrations of the old man of the mountain, the moon god. And in the ancient Arabic system, the moon god was called Sin, S-I-N. That was his name. The moon god of Arabia was Sin. And a mountain in the ancient language was spelled Ai. So you take the mountain Ai with the god who lived in the mountain, the moon god, Sin, and put it together, it becomes Sinai. So you get Moses goes up into Sinai. No, it's Sin Ai, the mountain of the moon god. And this is why Jews have their celebration after sundown, because that's when the moon comes out. They don't have the celebration during the day because that's when the sun's out. So that's the time for Christians to celebrate God's sun. The Jews are worshiping the moon god, Sin. So I don't intend to, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I'm just trying to tell you where religions come from. Religions have been given to us by the same people who gave us our government, our banks, our educational institutions, our whole entire ruddy system in Western civilization is based on religion, politics, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's just business. It's just money. It's just to control the people. And if you think it's crazy when I say sex, you have no idea in the world how sex plays a part in everything. The very fact that a man wears a black robe, that's a feminine dress. And God, there's so much you could talk about with this subject of sex in religion. The whole thing is based on sex. The cross is a sexual symbol. Even in Egypt, the Egyptian obelisk is like the Washington Monument, for instance. The Washington Monument is an Egyptian obelisk. An obelisk represented a male phallic in the erection. And the male phallic is connected to the female ovaries. It's called the Oval Office. Right? And the water strip is her water. And so when her water breaks, the male phallic connects to the female ovaries. The Oval Office. Sexual symbols everywhere. A six-pointed star, star of Saturn. So the point I'm making is that our institutions around the world, especially in Western civilization, are based on symbolism, lies, deception, manipulation of our thinking, and somewhere along the line, if you're really looking for truth, and most people aren't, like that movie when who was it? Tom. Yeah, in the movie anyway, the kid says he wants the truth, and the other guy said, you can't handle the truth. Yeah. I believe that's exactly right. I don't think that the world of mankind can handle the real truth about how the world really works. I said last night that I believe that democracy is the very worst possible form of government on the earth. I don't think you can get a worse government than democracy. And the reason I'm saying that, I can clarify it now. First of all, demos in Greek is a mob. That's why a mob is out in the street with plaques and ranting and raving. We call it a demonstration. A demonstration is a mob of people. And so democracy is the rule. So the rule of the mob is democracy. True democracy is 45 whites hanging one black. That's democracy. We all voted, and one guy's got to die. We all voted. It's democracy. No, America was founded as a constitutional republic. A constitutional republic means there is a set rule of laws that everyone abides by, and it was set up in such a way as to protect this person, the individual, from the mob. Because, down south where I come from, the Ku Klux Klan, they can pick out anybody they want, and there's 45 of them, and they take you out and hang you. And who's going to say anything? It was a democracy. We all voted, and therefore it must be legal. No. America was set up as a constitutional republic, which means the Constitution was a law. And everyone, no matter who is in the country, had to abide by the law. And it protected you as an individual. The biggest problem with a democracy is very simple if you just think about it. Democracy means mob rule. It doesn't matter what the law says. And incidentally, I want to throw this out to you. We hear all the time that America is a land of laws. We are a country based on law. In point of fact, that is not true. In point of fact, it is just the opposite. America is the most lawless country on the earth, period. There is no law in America. Think about that, what I just told you. There is no law in America. What we have here is whatever the judge says it is. And whatever the judge says it is, that's what the law is. If you go to a different court and the different judge of the same identical information, facts and figures, will maybe give a different verdict. Well, that's what the law is. That's the law. No, it's not the law. It's what that guy said. I learned all of this when I was in traveling around, going to the different churches and different cults. Jehovah's Witnesses are a classic example. I could use the Mormons as a classic example. I could use any of these churches as a classic example of what I'm talking about. There is no set law in any religious organization, in the church or any cult or any group or any political group. It's whatever the boss in that particular group says it is, that's what the law is. And so even in Jehovah's Witnesses, they will have the elder in that church will tell you, well, here's what the Bible says and here's what the law is. Now, if you go to a different one, and he was like, oh, that guy's full of bull. Here's what the real thing, and here's the real. And then you understand it doesn't matter where you go in any Mormon church, any Seventh-day Adventist church, any Christadelphian, any Worldwide Church of God, any cult, any rabbi, any synagogue, it doesn't matter. Whoever is in charge of that one particular church where you are, that's the law. And that's exactly what's going on in America. It doesn't matter what the actual law books say. You cannot go into a court in this country and win on the basis of facts. That is the facts of life. You cannot win in a court in America on the basis of facts, period. The judge don't give a damn about the facts. He's the boss, and in this court, he calls the shots. Well, yeah, but the other judge said, I don't care what the other judge said. This is my court, and I call the shots. So I will decide. If I kind of like you, maybe I'll give you a break. If I don't like you, maybe I'll add 10 years. Now, what are you going to do about it? You say, well, yeah, but the law says, no, don't bring that up. This is my court. I call the shots. Therefore, there is no law. America is a land of lawlessness. In the Bible, in the book of Revelation, it talks about the rise of the man of lawlessness. And I've often wondered about that. It's very interesting. A lot of interesting, important stuff written in the Bible if you know what you're looking at. But it talks about in the book of Revelation the rise of something called the man of lawlessness. And I used to wonder why, what in the world was that all about? Because America's got so many laws. We've got thousands of law books. That's all we are, has got law books. So how can there be a man of lawlessness that would rise in the world? Well, now I understand. America is the home of the man of lawlessness. George Bush couldn't care less what the Constitution says, the Bill of Rights. It just don't matter. He's the boss, and whatever he says do, that's what you're doing. You say, well, yeah, but the law says they don't care. And if you bring that up again, you're going to jail. Why? Because he represents the Vatican. The Bush regime was front for the Vatican. The most important enemy this country has today, people will never understand it, but the biggest enemy that this nation today has is the Vatican. The Vatican is behind the crap that's going on all over. What do you think the founding fathers, whatever we call them, the founding fathers, where did they come from? The people who founded this country, they came from Europe. Well, 2,500 years, Rome, under the Caesars of Rome, and then after the fall of the Caesars in the 4th century, and with the coming of the Vatican in the 5th century, all of Europe has been dominated for over 2,500 years by Rome. And Europe has dominated the world for 2,500 years. So I'm saying that if you want to find out who the real enemy of this country is, you better start looking at the Holy Father. And you better start finding out the connection between the Vatican and the Nazi Party of Adolf Hitler.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm sorry, we have very limited time, so we have to let David Wilcock come on stage now.
And I'm just getting warmed up.
I know you are, and God bless you. That's right. Yes, stand up for this man.
Okay. Thank you. I thought I was born with him.
Thank you, Jordan. We'd love to do a Camelot interview with you, Jordan. I'm saying that here in public on stage. Anytime.
I want to add one more comment quickly. When you hear people talking about Jewish conspiracy, Jewish this and Jewish that, it's Vatican, not Jewish.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.